Mm.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Ben.
And I'm your co-host, Carissa.
Perfect. And everyone, welcome into Computer America, where today on the program, we have the one, the only Mr. Scott Schober. He, a little bit time shifted, as he is normally on every last Wednesday, but that's okay. We have him here this week, more than happy to do that. And yeah, it's, going to be a really good show. So today, with our segments here, we always do, kind of recent news and recent events when it comes to cybersecurity, the landscape, and man, do we have a lot of different topics. It's going to be very, very interesting because it looks like Scott has quite a few, points of issue with recent stuff, including everything going on with TikTok. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you have noticed an uptick in election texts. Carissa, have you been getting those?
I have been, yeah.
Yeah, so have I. I even got one yesterday, saying that, hey, Aaron, you have not updated your recent voter records. And spoiler alert for everyone out there, my name is not Aaron. So, not only are they annoying, but they're also incorrect. And I wish I could respond to them, but I know they're just robots. So all that and more here in just a little bit. Everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, show notes, podcasts, archives, articles, reviews, social media links, all that and more, everything at computeramerica.com. Definitely check that out. So Carissa, as usual, I'll give you, I'll go ahead and give you the signal. Anything you want to talk about real quick? Anything you want to announce?
No, I'm good.
All right, perfect. And I am good too to go ahead and introduce our guest. And our guest is, as I said before, the one, the only longtime Computer America correspondent, and of course, Scott Schober. He is a cybersecurity expert, and of course, our resident cybersecurity expert, as well as CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems. And well, you may know him from Hacked Again, one of his best-selling books, and then his more recent one, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business. Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be here with you guys.
I'm more than happy to have you. I'm glad that you could join us. And obviously, as always, how have you been? It's it's been a little while.
Been busy, yeah. It's been great from a standpoint of the crazy cyber world and constantly reporting on different events unfolding. And it's kind of what you pointed to. A lot of things tied to election hacking, China. The texting was all surrounded around political things is certainly a continued ongoing mess there. So knee deep in that. And then from the business side, we've been very busy with government spending this year. A lot of the cyber groups within the government agencies have been spending on getting equipment and getting things updated. So we've been buried in orders, and I can't complain about that. But we're certainly keeping busy, and we're doing a major remodel within our company as well, a lab area, production areas. So 2 weeks worth of total craziness, and the dust is finally starting to settle, and things are coming together as the paint dries and everything else. So it's been fun the last few weeks.
I love to hear that you've been busy, and yeah, there's certainly a lot going on, obviously, to keep up with, and that doesn't take into account everything that you're doing there at Berkeley Varitronics. So that's awesome to hear. Okay, so before we get started, let's go ahead and just kind of share with our audience what it is that you try to do here on Computer America by joining us every month.
Yeah, this is a great platform, and I'm constantly getting feedback from some of your listeners. So I always love the questions that I'm asked and hearing feedback after an episode, which to me is a testament to how good you guys are doing getting the message out there. And I'm hoping to try to keep people encouraged that it's not hopeless out there. We can keep safe against cyber criminals, and a lot of times it's just employing best practices, using some common sense, not being complacent, not being lazy, but really all of us working together, sharing information, and implementing these things so we can fight back.
Right. Yeah. It really, best practices seem to be the theme of the last 2, 3, 4 years. And, it's not even some super crazy. This isn't a school. This is just, hey, much like we have learned over the past 9 months with coronavirus, wash your hands, wear your face masks, socially distance, that kind of thing. The rules to live by when it comes to not getting hacked are pretty simple. Complex passwords, don't click on links, pretty basic things. But hey, some of these stories, we're going to see that the basics aren't followed from a kind of defensive standpoint in so many cases. And also this one that we're going to talk about, I believe you deemed it something along the lines of one of the stupidest cyber attacks to ever happen. So trust me, there is no lack of intelligence, and obviously double negative there on either side of this fight. So everyone, sit back, relax, because we have a great show planned for you. Where I think we're going to start with this one from ZDNet, or let me translate that for all the Canadians out there: ZDNet. Ransomware surge in attacks as hackers take advantage of organizations under pressure. And really, when you think about it, I mean, what organization this year has not been under pressure? So, ransomware. Let's get a quick introduction to that again, Scott, and then we'll talk about, kind of the numbers.
Yeah, excellent. Well, first of all, just a brief dive into ransomware. Most people are now familiar with ransomware, but in a nutshell, what is ransomware? It's really when hackers will typically send a phishing email, or you click on an attachment. It could be from a pop-up. It could be even on your phone these days through a text message. But it's basically a strain of malware that when you click on it, it will download something onto your system, and it will basically encrypt all of your files. So you cannot have access to all your files. And then the cyber criminals will hold the magic key to decrypt those files, and in turn, they're demanding a ransom. So they basically hold you hostage until you pay them. Oftentimes it's cryptocurrency, and it's Bitcoins, an anonymous digital currency that is paid for the ransom so you can get your data back. And what's been happening, especially in the past few years, they keep upping the ante, making the software more sophisticated. So it'll go after not just your computer, but sometimes often your backup if it's connected. Mm-hmm. And the price to pay is often going up sky high, especially when they're targeting hospitals, universities, different counties and municipalities that house a lot of personal information that may be near and dear to taxpayers and companies, so they could command a premium and basically shut systems down. It's working really effectively. And I think the single biggest problem, and we probably all can appreciate this, these last 8 months have been rough with the pandemic because everybody's working remotely and accessing things remotely. So to remediate a case, investigate a ransomware case, to default to backups and get all the employees back up to speed, it's a nightmare now because everybody's everywhere and everything is not a level playing field. It's different when you can walk into the door in a single company and you can upgrade networks and check things all in the same day. Now, when you have hundreds of workers spread out over hundreds of miles, it's near impossible to remediate the situations quickly. So hence this article really stood out in my mind as hackers are trying to use it to their advantage, this global pandemic.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the numbers in just a second, but to really highlight that, like you said, over the course of this whole thing, I mean, having an online presence, companies and services that traditionally did not have a strong online presence now rely heavily on their online presence. So it's almost worse. Where it's like more people are being targeted, and it's never been more important to, unfortunately, kind of make yourself a target, because you have to do that. Scott, do you recall we did not talk about this, I think, a cybersecurity incident with Miami-Dade high schools back in August, when schools were about to open, and the majority of students were doing distance learning, but some of them were coming into schools. But they were about to open, and then the week of, their system was hit with a ransomware attack, and it shut down essentially the entire school system in Miami-Dade County, Florida. And that happened, I want to say, in August.
Yeah, I do remember reading the headlines on that and an article on that too. And I think with those type of situations, we kind of say, what's the big deal? But we forget how everything is tied into computers now.
Yeah,
I know my kids' school, both of them, the middle school and the high school, they're tied into their Google Chromebooks, and everybody has to access everything online, homework, grades. Parents have an access portal to each teacher. They have a special website, even sporting events. So everything is interconnected with the computer system. So all you have to do is lock all that up with one attack of a ransomware, and you literally shut the school down and make them powerless, unless, again, they have a backup to revert to, which oftentimes is not always there, or not that current, and not that easy to install on throughout the whole network, or give in and pay that ransom, or negotiate. And that's another thing that's been going on lately. A lot of it's negotiated things. So maybe they're asking for $100,000, but you could whittle them down to $30,000 if you're going to pay them. And oftentimes that happens, especially if you have a third party, you have cybersecurity insurance. The insurance company will come in and they'll negotiate it out, so they pay us a much smaller bribe for that.
It's those ransomware insurance policies have certainly taken off. I can't believe how popular they have become. Instead of, I know that we say it's not always possible to completely mitigate an attack, but it should be easier than just, hey, it's going to happen eventually, let's just pay the money. And by the way, I need to correct myself, where that Miami-Dade school system, that was a DDoS, which is a little bit different, but still, the update I wanted to say about that, because I think since you were last on, this happened. Turns out it was actually a 16-year-old who went to the school, and he didn't feel like going back to school, and actually shut down the entire Miami-Dade County school system. It turns out the FBI got him, and local authorities have arrested him, and he's in a lot of trouble. But
kids these days.
He caused headaches for I know that West Palm Beach has like 1 million, kind of 1 million people, not students, but still hundreds of thousands of students had 275,000 students. There it is, right there in the article. So not just ransomware, but DDoS as well. But that, again, we're on the rise of ransomware. So circling back around this article, ZDNet, and they even had the numbers. Looks like I had to pull it from their the place where they got their information from. But essentially, it's on the rise, and not just by a small amount. Did you, Scott, have a chance to check out these numbers with the top 5 countries and kind of what they were?
I know there's increases across the board, but especially here in the U.S., we've hit, in some cases, in fact, I was on an interview yesterday and reported that certain attacks are up about tenfold right now in contrast to pre-COVID conditions. So if you go back about 8 months ago, it's gotten 10 times worse in certain areas of things. And I think the other thing is, to add to that, they're upping their game. And in a sense, some of these hackers, they're not just doing a ransomware attack, they're mixing it with other things. Like you pointed out, a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service, where they flood the website with traffic. So your online presence, you can't access things. But they're also doing is they're threatening to expose things. So they're garnishing maybe personal information about individuals in the school system, in the municipality. And whether they have it or not, I don't know. But they then say, hey, we've got personal compromised photos with you that if you don't pay this ransom right away, we're going to expose these pictures of you naked doing this or that, or I don't know, some crazy thing. And some people probably have these crazy things going on in their lives and think, oh, wow, maybe somebody's really got some dirt on me. I'm in trouble. And they panic. And that, again, it forces them, puts the pressure on. And that's one of the tactics that cyber criminals use, a sense of urgency. They work against your fear. They work against your innocence, or try to incriminate you with some scary photos or
Real
things
quick,
that they think you have.
Yeah, and just real quick, Carissa, I don't think I've talked about that one while you've been on the show. Have you ever heard of something like that where it's kind of like ransomware, but they're like, hey, we have, as Scott said, compromising photos and videos of you, pay us money. Have you ever heard of something like that, Carissa?
Only on Black Mirror, actually. I've never actually heard of that actually happening, but there was an episode about that on Black Mirror one time.
Yeah, it's and they even make it a little bit more authentic because they take some of your old passwords that are associated with, let's say, your email address, and they'll email and say, hey, look, we have your password. This is your password, and it's your actual password. May not be your current one, but it may be a past one. And they'll say, hey, we use this username, this password, got these photos, and we're going to release them. So, Scott, they kind of mix that element of information that is publicly available and just the scare tactics to really get their way.
Yeah, and I think nowadays too, and I've done just a little searching on the web to see if I was a hacker, could I build a profile of somebody to see what information I could gather to use against them. So a lot of times it's combinations, and we've talked about this, social engineering, it's simple searches, but it's also diving into the dark web and putting in certain names that you could suddenly find, wow, this person had their password breached in the Yahoo breach. This person had information compromised here. Now you start to put these pieces together like a puzzle, and wow, you do have a lot of credible information about individuals that you could use to threaten them. Again, whether they're current or not, to me, if I looked at something and I saw and said, wow, that's scary, that was my password I used for 5 years, I would believe this person and say they got dirt on me or they're going to do something against me. They might have more. I've really got to be careful now. So it's breaking down the barriers and instilling fear in us to take action. And I think that's what hackers are really getting good at. And unfortunately, what happens once you give in, once you pay a ransom, once you pay the fine, the fee, and you're naturally moved over to another column or another list, and they say, this guy's a sucker. We're going to go after him again with another strain of ransomware 6 months from now. So it doesn't mean you're off the hook. It means you got to really up your game. And that's why I keep telling people, make sure you back up your data, back up your data, back up your data as the minimal thing that you do there, because you can only do so much to fight off the strains. You can only do so much educating people not to click, and junk filters and malware, anti-malware software. All those things are good, but none of them are the magic silver bullet. It's doing a little bit of everything in every area that will minimize your odds of becoming a victim.
Absolutely. And by the way, the research that the ZDNet article was quoting, just so everyone out there knows, and this is just Q3, so just the last 3 months, they've seen an increase of this ransomware, 100% in the United States. The US saw a 98.1% increase, India about a 40%, Sri Lanka 436% increase, Russia 58%, and Turkey 32%. Clearly, this is happening in countries all over the world, and one of the more popular ones seems to be this ransomware called Ryuk. I have not had the pleasure of even hearing about this one, but this seems to be one that is being used up to 20 times a week recently. It's very interesting how a singular ransomware threat, we can say this is Ryuk, and they may change a little bit here and there, but Scott, I think this goes to updates, and why they're important is because you'd think that once it's seen somewhere once, they get that definition, and they can kind of detect it before it does anything, and identify the infected systems. But I mean, these things can float out there for months and they still find vulnerable computers.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes certain cyber criminals have actually deployed campaigns where they push it out there, it gets onto your system, and it actually lies dormant for a period of time until they tell everybody, okay, now kind of like a botnet attack where they're using IoT to do things. They could do similar types of things with ransomware attacks. That way they could manage and handle, I don't want to say all their customers, that sounds wrong, all their victims, I guess I should say. So they're not flooded with a million things at once, and they could manage it. And because it's a form of business. They legitimize it in their minds and say, hey, this is a legal business, and there's rules to the game. And if you want to be on the internet and use computers, then you run the risk of getting attacked. And if you do, you got to pay up or else. And that's the game that these cyber criminals are playing. And they really are modifying their campaigns. And to your point, there's literally thousands of new strains of ransomware and malicious software, malware released every single day. Years ago, that would be over the course of a year.
Yeah.
But that's increased to the point where it's thousands of different strains every single day. So what does that mean? Somebody will get a script and they'll modify it or tweak it so it's optimized for their specific purpose. They may sell that to another cyber criminal, post it on the dark web, somebody buys it, and they'll modify it yet again. And oftentimes, if you do analyze the code, you could sense, hey, this was probably authored from somebody that originated out of Russia. This looks like this part, or this routine looks like something that came from Romania. And it's a big culmination of different cyber criminals all put together into one software package. So that makes the forensic side of things, when the security teams go in and try to figure out what the heck happened, where did it come from, who put it here, how long has it been sitting here, it makes it almost impossible and very expensive to actually do the forensics and try to remediate it so it doesn't happen again. And that's the part that is so painful. And I think companies, especially as they're larger size companies, they have to get teams of people in there, and they have to have a lot of insurance in place, because the cost, as you could imagine, will be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to do an initial investigation. Pricey for most companies.
Right. And it's unfortunately only going to keep happening. And much like this article said, much like you just reiterated, no matter how much educating or kind of endpoint security that you do, it's going to happen. And backup seem to be one of the biggest ways that you can protect yourself. Although, as we saw with, I want to say it was Baltimore and the Baltimore local government there, they had recent backups. They were good to go. But they didn't have a way to implement their backup, and they were shut down for like 2 or 3 weeks while they were scrambling to reinstall every single computer in the network, because, hey, they didn't really plan for that. So have a backup and have a plan.
Yeah, I think you're right. Implementing the plan sometimes can be as hard as regular backups, because the larger your network, the more computers, the more time, the more money, and the more disruption. I think in that case with Baltimore, a lot of that system also was tied into the payroll. So now imagine and ask yourself, if you're an employee and your boss says, sorry, we got hacked with a ransomware attack, you're not getting paid this week, what are you going to do? You're going to go like, what do you mean? Don't you have a backup? Well, don't you have give me a manual check, give me cash, give me anything. I got to pay my bills. So you could see how that could really get attention of a lot of very frustrated workers, for sure. And I think that was part of the problem there.
Right. So there's that one. And obviously ransomware is going to continue to be a thing. Because we're going to be working from home. And really, even after the whole thing's said and done, we have a vaccine, everyone can go back to living their regular germy lives. It's still going to be a thing, because people, Google has already signaled all their employees are free to work from home, for the rest of their career. Like, I think just like a day or two ago, Blizzard announced that they're closing their office in France, where they employ a couple hundred people, because hey, they just don't have to. Everyone's working from home and they're good to go. Working online and having more networks is just more important than ever, and it will continue to be that way. So there's that one story. Number one story. Story number two. News 12, New Jersey, if I recall correctly. You often right there. You often contribute to this, and so I'm fully expecting to see your face here. But yeah, so Scott Schober. Let's talk about real quick this video, obviously, and yep. Hey, speak of the devil. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people out there have been getting on both sides of the political spectrum, but hey, you haven't updated your voter records. Hey, you need to check out this talking platform here, whatever. It seems to be not so far. I haven't really noticed or heard anything about malicious campaign texting where they're trying to steal your data or anything like that. They're trying to be proactive and get you to register to vote and get you motivated to go out there and vote for either political party, blah, blah, blah. But they're very annoying and they're very unsolicited, and it makes you think, if cable companies can't message you all the time and tell you to upgrade or switch, why can political campaigns do what is essentially robotexting, which I thought was illegal? Let's talk about robotext and, from kind of like a political angle, what is happening with all these texts? They've really picked up the pace in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and here's some of the interesting parts about it. So robotexting is illegal for the most part. Most of the texts that you're getting that have a political nature to them, there is actually, if you can believe it, a person doing this, texting you, that's specifically targeting you. So if your name is on a voter database, they could pull up your phone number and they can legally send you a text from a person to person, peer to peer. And they're not breaking the law. Is it annoying? Absolutely. Is it distracting? Absolutely. I'm getting them. I'm not on a registered voting database, yet I still get them too. And sometimes it's to my name. Sometimes it's to some other guy's name. So there's a lot of mistakes and problems with it. You may have seen the same thing. You are encouraged to respond in all caps, unsubscribe or stop. If they're a legitimate house, whether it's this party or that party, supposedly they're supposed to remove your name. You're not supposed to keep getting them. I've tried it. I keep getting them as usual. It's like the world of robocall.
I haven't even gotten those, and I have to say that it makes me even a little bit more suspicious, because the link that they send me, which get out the vote, whatever the website is that they want you to click on. I'm pulling one up right now. voterednc.com / and then instead of having some kind of URL that you can kind of identify, / voter registration / information, whatever, it's actually / my phone number. And that tells me nothing, and it puts me on edge.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those awkward things. The other scam that, I don't know if you call it a scam again, but it's been happening, is they want to engage you. So what they found is if you compare the open rate for email is approximately 20% these days. So if I know the end email address I send it, I have a 20% success rate that Ben is going to open my email.
You have 100%, Scott. I trust you.
100%, hopefully. If you really know me, sure. If you know the other part, it's different. But for a stranger, I should say, to properly say it, 20% open rate. If you send a text, you have a 90% chance that the person is going to read it, and see it. That's pretty high in the world of advertising and marketing. That's gold. So I think the world of politics has looked at that and said, wow, it's roughly 5 to 6 cents per text, the cost for them to send it nonstop for people sending it from their phones. It's worth it for them. That's a low cost of entry to get people to get out there and vote. And at the same time, they try to ask you questions and chat with you. So they may share a thought or two back and forth with you. So you lean toward Biden's camp or Trump's camp or whatever the case may be, where they're trying to sway you. So it's become an effective campaign where people can't go to knock on your door and try to get you to get out there to vote or twist your arm or anything else.
Right. And those are the two political parties after John Mcafee unfortunately had to drop out. But there we are. It's certainly a problem, but like you said, it's not technically illegal. It feels like it should be, though. But I guess you kind of consent to this kind of thing when you you consent to it when you register to vote. And, they say, that's been, it almost seems like a legal loophole. And especially when it comes to, so much of technology, the laws that we are using have to be interpreted for like other things. Like, the majority of the internet is regulated by, laws that were written for telegraphs. I do you think something like this is going to happen in, let's say, 2024, or like, just kind of text, getting these campaign texts is just going to start happening a lot more? Because I don't really recall this happening all too much in 2016. Like social media and ads being blanketed across the internet, totally a thing. These targeted texts though seem to be pretty new to 2020.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 2016, it was certainly a little bit different game. Social media was a key ingredient. And then as the election cycle got closer in the past year or two, what's really been happening, and I guess you could call it political censorship or whatever the appropriate term is there, everyone from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they all started putting their algorithms in place to block and stop actual advertising or pushing or promoting through their platforms if there's things of political nature. In the beginning, it was more hateful speech and racism and other things like that. Mm-hmm. But I guess all the pressure, they slowly started to change. And I can honestly say I tried promoting one on Twitter, a simple interview that I had, and they actually said it was a political nature. And I was surprised. They don't want to take advertising dollars or promote things, even if it has a hint or a leaning this way or that way, which I thought was very interesting because tech companies, that's how they make their money when people are advertising on their platform. But they're getting such backlash now from so many different groups, and they're getting regulation. They have to do something. They're walking on this tightrope, and eventually I think new laws and regulation will have to come into play, be it the Federal Trade Commission, the FCC, the federal government. Somebody's going to start pushing hard to say, hey, here's the law. You can't go over the line here, or else you're going to get heavily fined. And that's the pickle that they're in right now. And I think what will happen, as you said, more and more of these SMS texts are going to be flying our way up until election time. And then I think the game will change yet again for the next election cycle, because laws will be in place to prevent that from happening. Or we're going to all rush out and get apps and filters and other things because we're so sick and tired of receiving all these robo-like texts.
Right. And you can look at other countries, and especially in Europe, where a lot of the regulation that is coming out seems to be coming out from the EU. Obviously, the EU can't regulate what's happening with the US election cycle, but I did find it interesting that, like in the UK, you're only allowed to, like, the people in the UK who are running for office only run for election like in the 1 month prior to the election, and they're not allowed to advertise like anywhere. Like they're allowed like only a handful of broadcasts that they can kind of say, hey, here's our platform, here are our issues, and then it's done. Like they really put a clamp down because of whatever reasons that they do it. The U.S. is very, very open, and it seems like every new technology is a new way to kind of take advantage of it. And we're going to move on just a second and talk about TikTok. And speaking of taking advantage of new platforms, but yeah, it's social media in 2000, in 2012, 2016 in particular, Scott, we have talked about how that wasn't so much of a hack or even like an abuse of social media. That was more using social media as intended. It's just we didn't like the people who were using social media as intended, which turned out to be kind of nefarious overseas actors.
Yeah. And I think in most of the cases there, it's been proven the disinformation, the distraction, the ability for another country to cause question to the democratic process that takes place here, that sole goal was probably achieved in many different camps. And I think that was the fundamental concern that a lot in the American government had, seeing where things were and where things were heading. It was a mess.
Well,
I was going to just throw out there, you
Sure.
made another point about, who was it? John Mcafee. I don't know if you saw in the last day or two that he was actually arrested
I did see that. That's
It was
probably
kinda
why he was on my
interesting.
mind.
Yeah, maybe that's why it was on your mind, because it was on mine too. I read that one article, I think it was last night or during the day there, that he was arrested, I believe, in Spain, and it was somehow tied to some tax evasion stuff due to the promotion of cryptocurrencies and things. He was very busy in the world of Twitter on that with cryptocurrency, and he didn't give the proper disclosures back then, made probably a lot of
He
money, and ran.
from what I from what I recall, back when crypto and man 20 I think it was like 2017 or 2018, it was a wild ride with cryptocurrency. Like every second company that kind of sent us a message and said, hey, we'd like to be interviewed on Compute America, everyone had a new blockchain, everyone had a new cryptocurrency, everyone had an initial coin offering. It was a blur of a couple of months there. But yeah, McAfee was arrested for, I guess, essentially using his platform, because like you said, he was a big player in the cryptocurrency space when it came to news and information and the hot new coin and things like that. And he would kind of behind the scenes get his audience to buy into a coin, sell out of it, and then of course leave the people who were unsuspecting and leave them with the bag. So I think he was arrested for what would, I guess, right now be kind of like stock manipulation, except obviously cryptocurrency has little to no regulation on it. So yeah, John McAfee, that is an entire show onto itself if you want a very interesting gentleman who is living a very colorful life. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, seems like he's going to be staying in one place for a little bit now. But with that being said, I had one more point I wanted to make with all this stuff, but it completely flew out of my head. That's okay though. We're going to go ahead and move on. So, campaign, all that stuff. The texts are going to continue to come until new regulations pass. And really, I'm surprised that all it would take would be a little bit of a revision to say robocalling and robotext are already illegal. They're also legal for, kind of third-party campaigns and things like that. So I would not be surprised if that's coming soon. Now, with that being said, our next story is something that Carissa and I have actually talked about for quite a while now. We had, Carissa, was it the Washington Post?
I believe it was, or the New York Times.
One of those nice publications. They were kind enough to lend us one of their
Washington Post.
It was the Washington Post, kind enough to lend us one of their reporters who actually talked about TikTok and the Trump administration and WeChat to a much lesser extent. But that whole situation, we highly encourage you. Unfortunately, it was like 2.5 weeks ago, so that's like forever in terms of this whole TikTok scenario. But the skinny of it is that, well, actually, Scott, I'll let you go ahead and give us the skinny of it, but why do you bring it up? Because when it comes to cybersecurity, I guess the main issue was, are they taking your data and what data are they taking? So what got you interested in this?
I think fundamentally, what is different about TikTok as an app on our actual mobile phone versus another app? It's really not much different at all. In other words, all apps are collecting information. We opt in and say, hey, if I download this app for free, I'm willing to give you my personal information, be it access to my contacts, my likes, what I viewed on my browser recently. So the fundamental problem with this is TikTok is by record the fastest growing social media company ever in the history. Mm-hmm. So it's blowing by all the other companies. And if you look at the big tech giants out there, you look at Google, certainly you look at Facebook with Instagram, they're trying to compete, and the users, they're not catching up. In other words, they're going to be blown away by TikTok. I think TikTok now represents the number 2 as far as the most popular platform for young adults or teenagers or whatever. And it's just going to continue to grow in the masses, and it's got a huge appeal here in the US. Yet TikTok is what? It's a Chinese company. So all of that personal data that's collected, even though they claim it's encrypted, where does it reside and who has access to it? If the Chinese government said, I need access to this, give me the decryption keys, they would have to, by law, as a Chinese company, say, here, unlock it, and they have access to the data. and that's the data to hundreds of millions of people that really probably don't want to have their data out there. Now, is it private, personal stuff? Probably not, but how much information is put out on TikTok and how long people are spending on TikTok each and every day, especially, it's the perfect storm because we're in this pandemic. You got kids, they're at home, they've got time on their hands.
They
just
can't
posting
hang out
things.
with their friends. They're looking to interact socially. So TikTok has, and of course all of the free publicity. As soon as the American government says, "Hey, TikTok should be banned," everyone's going to go, "What's TikTok? Let's go check that out."
Exactly. Yep. Even when they said that, hey, by Sunday at this time we're going to ban it, you can't download it ever. The servers were smoking because every kid in the world that didn't already have it downloaded is racing to download it. So you're right. You're always, what you're told you can't have as a teenager is what you're going to go pursue and get. So to that end, it worked for their favor, like the perfect storm. I look at Zoom the same way. I mean, we're all trapped and working remotely. Everybody flocked to Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at packages like Skype that had widespread adoptance, and all these other large tech
Google
companies
Hangouts
that spent a ton
and
of money. Yeah, and what happened? Everybody migrated to Zoom, and is Zoom a good package? Yeah, it's got a lot of good features. It's easy to use. It's a good price. So you see the balance. Consumers are going to flock to what they like and what's affordable over what big tech says, no, you got to take. They had to work out their security concerns, but eventually once they did that, more and more people, I think, adopted it. And I think if you had to pick what's the most popular platform, people rattle off their tongue, Zoom. If you went back last year, everyone would say, Zoom, what is that, some car service or something? They wouldn't know what it is. So you could see that the circumstance and timing changed things for Zoom. The same with TikTok, perfect storm for them to rocket growth. The problem was, I think, when the Trump administration stepped in and said, well, it's got to be a U.S. company. If you don't sell it to a U.S. company, then forget it. And Microsoft was a suitor, and Walmart and Oracle. And now the Chinese has to make sure that they approve it because they don't want to release certain algorithms. And that's really the fundamental argument now. So it's going to stretch on until November, until some decision comes up, whether it'll happen or not.
Yeah, from what I recall, when I last heard, and you can kind of fill in what's kind of changed, they were supposed to sell to a U.S. company. Trump gave them 30 days, and that 30 days came and went. Microsoft dropped out of the bidding not really for some reason, but the Chinese government said that this was essentially stealing one of their companies, which very much it looked like it. It was a very I've never seen anything like that happen before. And then Oracle and Walmart said that they were going to take like a 10% stake in a new company that was like TikTok Global, or whatever it was, or Global ByteDance, and essentially they were going to spin off their non-Chinese, like essentially their North America arm. It was still going to be TikTok, and ByteDance of China fame was still going to own ByteDance Global, but ByteDance Global was going to be registered in the US, and it was going to be, again, 10% owned by American companies. That wasn't enough, and I don't know, obviously everyone was scrambling to say, how are we going to make this work without actually handing over what I think at that point was like a $34 billion ask. I think that's like somewhere in the tens of billions of dollars. That's what they eventually were trying to sell to Microsoft. Microsoft pulled out. Everyone pulled out. I think Walmart and Oracle are still in it for ByteDance Global. But anyways, all of that's going down. I'm sure there are lawyers and accountants behind the scenes just pulling their hair out. And I think Trump revised it and said you now have 90 days, which you would think, if this is an imminent threat to American security, should we really be giving them 30, 60, 90 and just keep pushing that back until, I guess, kind of a deal is worked out?
Yeah, it's a tough one to say. I mean, the Trump administration, he's throwing out a lot of things here and there without looking at the technical aspects of it, in my opinion. He claims national security. Is it feasible that could affect national security? Sure. All these companies and all these apps, whether they're here based in the US or abroad, I think that technically is a possibility because, again, they all have access to our critical data there. So who knows where they could pull it the wrong thing. But fundamentally, I think what what the argument from the technical side is, it's really somebody that understands. I don't know if you've ever tried TikTok, either of you. It's a stupid app, in my opinion. Have I downloaded it and tried it? I admit I have. And my kids were annoyed at me because even their teachers were on there dancing and singing and lip syncing and stuff that I had to check out. And then I go to parent-teacher conference and you look at them and say, what is going on here? But that's the new world, and many young ones love that type of stuff and they get a kick out of it. But it's the algorithm that's the part, to me, that's the exciting part of TikTok. It's actually curating what your likes and your views and your dwell time. So you're really steering TikTok with the artificial intelligence algorithm in there to cater stuff just to you. So next time you go on, if you like crazy cat videos, guess what? It's going to be throwing up things with crazy cat videos that make you laugh or give you excitement and enjoyment. And that's how it's so popular. It was banned in India for a while. And the main reason is because a lot of the pornographic nature of the material. Now, I'm not saying that Indians all like pornographic things, but apparently if they keep liking certain things or people that are viewing it and it keeps tailoring it to them, they get upset. The parents see it, whatever happened, it went up to the government, and finally they said, that's it, we're banning TikTok from the entire country because everything's being targeted toward them and it's ruining the culture and other things. So you could see how a small company can explode overnight and be so powerful in the world of social media. And then from the Oracle perspective, as you were talking about, Oracle's play really for this is because they're going to house the data here in the US. On US servers up in the cloud somewhere, but basically keep the security aspect of it here. So that way there's, in a sense, a wall between it, which is kind of interesting. It's a lot of this reminds me of the way China censors things, censors the internet and apps, what you watch, what you see. It's kind of the reverse happening here with the Trump administration pushing things. They're applying Chinese censorship rules to things that people can or can't view and see and be part of here in the United States. So it's all new territory here. And I think a lot of people are saying, how could this even happen? How can you explain it? How can you argue it? And I think that's part of the fundamental problem. It's all up in the air. Now the administration is rushing to find laws and rules that they could put in place that meet and match what they said they're going to do. So it's going to be a long, drawn out mess, I think.
And there has been a lot of detractors as well as saying that, well, China pulls all this information out of ByteDance, and all that data that China pulls all of this information out of TikTok, and really it goes to show that, like you said way at the beginning, this is not unique to TikTok. Most apps, even just a couple of years ago, apps were getting in trouble for, kind of pulling down all the information that they could because a company would say, hey, we are we put a filter over your pictures. Like, we make your pictures look a little bit different. And I'm sure the developers were like, should we ask location-based data? Of course, we got to know where people are. We'll put, kind of location-specific filters. Do we need to know how fast they're moving? And they're like, not really, but we can, so why not? Do we need to know what websites they visited? And they're like, well, why not? The data's there. It's asking for permission. Let's go ahead and take the data because we can. And I feel like TikTok is the same way. US-based apps are the same way. And it almost feels like a little bit like the US doesn't like this is because it's China in particular, as opposed to a lot of these apps that are doing the exact same thing, even based on US servers, they're still pulling down the same thing because the US, I talked about the EU and the EU regulation has been coming out and all that kind of thing, but the US has not caught up to the EU when it comes to data protections. That's still mainly coming out of the EU.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think when I look at this and you look at ByteDance's stance on this, and then you contrast it with other app developers, I think it is kind of interesting. And they made a claim and they said, you know what? We've never given any of the data that we've collected to the Chinese government. That may be true, but Facebook has also said that. And so is Google. And then you see 6 months later, well, yeah, they didn't directly do it, but it was a third-party API that had access to the data that then in turn allowed it to get breached or shared it or sold it or put it out on the web or something else. So sometimes directly the companies don't do things, but it's an intermediary, a third party that has access to it or is paying for access to it, is taking that personal data and putting it out there in the wild. So companies, especially large tech companies, have a social responsibility, I feel, to really keep personal information personal and private. I always go back and I laugh to the point with Ashley Madison, and when you paid an extra fee to keep your personal private data about all the affairs you were having, personal and private, so your significant other didn't learn about it, only to find out it all got out there. And you're saying, geez, I paid this insurance policy.
Text. In plain text too, not even like encrypted and hashed and salted and cooked or whatever. It was just plain text in a spreadsheet,
right out there for the taking, with everybody's .gov, .mil, .edu, and everything else there, and the suffix of their email, which told you where it's coming from, and what a disaster. But a lot of times these tech companies make these really strong, bold promises where, our number one priority is to protect your data. And that's usually in the breach disclosure there. And I'm like, yeah, but you just let us down 5 times before. And now you're telling me you let me down and you're giving me free monitoring services. So you don't want to be a victim down the road when your information's out there. And what that tells me is don't put too much stuff out there. And that's what we're all guilty of. If we're not going to use the app on a regular basis, delete it off our smartphone. Because you're consciously giving up something, your location, your personal data, access to it, or allowing that company to sell it to a third party. But really, this TikTok, I don't think, is the main company that's the target per se. It's more the precedent that the Trump administration is going for here. Because the bigger story, in my opinion, which is talked about a lot less, is WeChat. WeChat is one of the most popular chatting services in the world. Again, a Chinese-owned company. And if you look at it, what is the basis of WeChat? WeChat is one of the most powerful payment applications out there. There are Chinese companies, and their sole means of payment is through their mobile phone and through WeChat. If you take away WeChat, their business goes under. They have to find a new way to pay. Now think about Chinese that are here in America, or Americans that are just doing business with China that do use WeChat as a payment. If the administration now blocks it and says you can no longer download it, you can't use it, that's going to have a tremendous economic impact to America and Chinese business relations that will have tremendous fallout that nobody really is discussing that much right yet. But that will be the next step if this keeps kicking the can down the road, I think. Scary.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to another topic in just a second, but I wanted to just kind of say real quick that WeChat, it's not as big here in the US, which is why, Scott, I think we're not really talking about it that much. But in other countries, especially in Southeast Asian countries, and China in particular, India, WeChat is, I think you're even underplaying it, more than a little bit. It's not just payment; it's also news. It's social media. It's like if you mixed,
everything.
It's like if you mix Bank of America with Twitter, with kind of just every major news outlet all wrapped into one. It is probably
That's crazy.
It is probably the most used application outside of the United States. Like TikTok is about fun videos and social media, but WeChat is just huge. So that's probably a bigger deal. But again, it's not really used here in the US. So that's why it's not that talked about. Now, okay, we have like about 5 minutes left, and we had so many other great topics I want to talk about. But I wanted to talk about this one from Forbes. A hacker uploads his own fingerprints to crime scene in the dumbest cyber attack ever. So I think that everyone out there has seen like those old fashioned movies where they're dusting for prints. It used to be, and probably still is, very common practice to see who breaking and entering and that kind of thing. One of the benefits of hacking someone and stealing from them virtually is that you physically don't have to be there and leave fingerprints. This is very dumb, Scott. What happened?
Yeah, this one I didn't fully understand why, and I don't know if anybody else did. What caught my eye as I started reading it is Darktrace is a company that's got great depth of experience in the world of cybersecurity. I know a lot of the people there at Darktrace, and they've got some pretty advanced artificial intelligence algorithms that are out there that are constantly scanning and finding vulnerabilities. So they're looking out on the internet, looking within companies, and in this case, they were looking at some of the fingerprint recognition, and they saw an anomaly that to me is the brilliant part of this, that people do stupid things, but here's a good example of artificial intelligence that can actually detect an anomaly in fingerprints. So you have a series of authorized fingerprints that would access these terminals. Now you've got this cyber criminal that purposely put the physical fingerprint on there, and it saw it as an anomaly, a red flag, and that's what caught this idiot, who was so dumb that I don't know why he exactly did that, but it was really more for a sense of physical access later on to get in, is my understanding of it. But to me, it points to the brilliance of artificial intelligence used to combat not just cybersecurity, but in this case, it works together with physical security, and that to me is just brilliant. That's the future where we're going to see some wins against the cyber criminals.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he was trying to gain access to a warehouse. The warehouse uses fingerprint scanners, and he thought by deleting some authorized users, he could upload his own fingerprints. And so when he went there physically, he'd be able to put his fingerprint in and, gain access to the warehouse. Now, obviously, like you said, the AI that this company was utilizing actually saw that, one of the scanners was behaving differently, and became aware of the attack within minutes, and they had some pretty conclusive evidence to provide to law enforcement as to who it was. The Darktrace AI, and he definitely uploaded his own fingerprints to the machine, but I definitely think that that's the catchy headline. The really cool part of the story, though, is that AI that, it would cost you a lot of money to pay a trained cybersecurity professional to sit there and monitor everything. But to have an AI go in there and say, this is abnormal, and it's alerted everyone within minutes, that is super cool, and probably one of the most encouraging things I've heard, kind of from one of our stories, Scott, about security.
Yeah, it's something promising. This story reminded me of the crazy one, and I don't know if I ever shared it. And just in short, years ago, they were catching criminals walking around with sausages in their pocket. And what they were doing is taking sausages, they were wiping them on the finger scanner of an ATM, and it would move the print to the sausage, and then they would simply warm it up. And later on, they'd go back and they'd reapply the sausage, and it would give them authentication to the early days of ATM fingerprints that were not that secure.
I had not heard about that.
And the tell was if you had a bunch of sausages in your pocket, or a bunch of dogs were chasing you down the road, or something stupid like that. But things have since migrated, and you can't do that anymore. So don't go out and buy
disappointing.
a package of Jimmy Dean's or anything like that. But it shows how cyber criminals are really they're willing to take risk and do cutting edge things and experiment and have fun, all for monetary gain, I guess, and to say, they've got bragging rights. They broke into the ATM, or in this case, they hacked the authentication system for a fingerprint machine, and so on and so forth. But again, AI is powerful. It does have good uses, and we're starting to see it in real world applications that are going to make our lives much better. And it all has to do with, I think, this is what's pushing it. Smartphones and the horsepower in our smartphones are going to take things to the next generation. And that's where it's going to get really exciting. And hacking has to go to a whole new level to stay ahead of AI soon.
This whole article is full of gems. They even talk about one further down about in 2017 where cyber criminals were actually accessing data regarding, people who gambled there. They hacked into the aquarium at the casino, and I guess the sensors, the salinity, the temperature, the feeding schedules, things like that were all, kind of automated, and they were connected to an unsecured network, but they were able to hack into the sensors to then use that as a vector to get into kind of the larger network that held contact information and card information, things like that. But people in I believe they said Norway or Sweden, Finland, there we go, of course, Finn. In Finland they hacked an aquarium to get at high rollers at a casino. This whole article is very entertaining.
Was the casino at the aquarium?
Well, no. The aquarium, as in like the fish tank. The fish tank inside the casino was the attack vector for the hackers to get into the network.
Gotcha.
that was kind of like the back door or their conduit to actually get in. Because who would think, well, we got to secure this big giant aquarium they probably paid millions of dollars for. Security is weak there. And again, cyber criminals are always looking for the weakest link. That's their game. So whether they're looking to get in through your aquarium, the receptionist, socially engineer, or something else, everything throughout your facility has to be secure. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And some of the stories that we didn't get to include, of course, half of all organizations experienced cybersecurity incidents during the remote working period, as well as Horry County Police investigating after a virtual classroom was hacked. We'll include them in the show notes, Scott. You've been doing a lot of great work, and it sounds like you're keeping busy, which I hope it stays busy. But of course, the holidays are coming up, and hey, I hope you have fun as well. Scott, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. As always, thank you to Carissa for being our co-host, and hey, thank you everyone out there for tuning into Computer America. Ladies and gentlemen, we're flat out of time. I want to thank you so much. We'll catch you here next time. Everyone, have a great day. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Take care. Stay safe.